The rescue and first contact the morning mist clung to the crimson peaks like a living thing, swirling around the jagged red stone formations that had kept explorers at bay for generations. Marcus Chun adjusted his camera equipment and checked his climbing gear one final time. As a former aerospace engineer turned nature photographer, he had scaled dangerous peaks across 3 continents. But something about these mountains felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with an ancient energy that made his skin prickle with awareness. Local legends warned that the Crimson Peaks were cursed, home to creatures that had vanished from the rest of the world. The indigenous people called it Dragon's Crown and refused to venture beyond the foothills. Most dismissed these stories as primitive superstition, but Marcus had learned to respect local wisdom during his years of wilderness photography. Still, the promise of capturing images of an untouched ecosystem had proven too tempting to resist. The path he followed was barely more than a game trail, winding through twisted trees whose bark had been stained deep crimson by mineral deposits. In the soil, his modified hiking boots found purchase on the rocky ground as he climbed steadily upward. The weight of his professional camera gear balanced perfectly across his shoulders. Every few hundred meters, he would pause to photograph the increasingly alien landscape, documenting flora that existed nowhere else on Earth. It was during one of these photography stops that he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in any natural environment he had ever encountered. The cry was high-pitched and desperate, cutting through the perpetual whisper of wind among the peaks like a blade. Marcus froze, his finger poised over the camera's shutter release, and listened intently. The sound came again, weaker this time, but unmistakably a distress call from some kind of animal. His engineering mind immediately began calculating distances and directions. The cry seemed to originate from a narrow canyon about 200 meters to his northeast, a place where the red stone walls created a natural acoustic amplifier. Whatever creature was making that sound was in serious trouble, and despite his better judgment, Marcus found himself abandoning his planned route to investigate. His parents had always said his compassion for suffering creatures would get him into trouble one day. The descent into the canyon required careful navigation. The walls were slick with moisture from underground springs, and loose stones threatened to send him tumbling with every step. As he worked his way deeper into the geological formation, the distress calls grew more frequent and urgent. Marcus could hear the exhaustion in whatever was making the sound, and he quickened his pace despite the treacherous terrain. When he finally rounded a massive boulder and saw the source of the cries, Marcus nearly dropped his camera in shock. Caught in what appeared to be some kind of energy trap was a creature that shouldn't exist, a dragon. Not the massive, legendary beasts of fairy tales, but a youngling no larger than a house cat, with scales that shimmered between deep emerald and brilliant gold. Its delicate wings were spread wide, trembling with pain and exhaustion as crackling energy fields held it, suspended a foot above the rocky ground. The trap itself was clearly artificial, a sophisticated piece of technology that seemed completely out of place in this remote wilderness. Crystalline nodes arranged in a perfect hexagon generated the containment field, their surfaces pulsing with alien symbols that hurt to look at directly. This was not the work of any human government or organization that Marcus recognized. The design principles were fundamentally different from anything in his aerospace engineering background. The baby dragon's eyes met his, and Marcus felt a shock of connection that went beyond the visual. Those eyes held intelligence, fear, and something that looked remarkably like hope. The creature had stopped struggling against its prison and was watching him with an intensity that suggested it understood he might be its only chance at freedom. Its scaled chest rose and fell with rapid, shallow breaths that spoke of exhaustion and growing weakness. Marcus approached cautiously, his engineer's mind already analyzing the trap's construction. The energy field was maintaining a precise frequency. That seemed to interfere with the dragon's natural abilities, probably its capacity for flight, and possibly more. As he circled the trap, taking careful measurements with his camera's built-in sensors, he noticed that the crystalline nodes were drawing power from underground sources, tapping into the same mineral deposits that gave the mountains their distinctive coloration. The solution, when it came to him, was elegantly simple. These crystals were operating on harmonic resonance principles, maintaining their field through synchronized vibration. If he could disrupt that synchronization, the entire trap would collapse. Marcus pulled a small tool from his emergency kit, a sonic calibrator he used for adjusting camera equipment in extreme environments. The device was designed to generate precise frequency patterns for testing electronic components, not working quickly but carefully. Marcus positioned himself between two of the crystalline nodes and began generating counterharmonics. The alien symbols on the crystals flickered and wavered as their resonance patterns became unstable. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fine-tuned the frequency, walking a careful line between disruption and dangerous feedback. One miscalculation could cause the crystals to overload explosively. The baby dragon seemed to sense what he was attempting. Its struggles ceased entirely, and it held itself as still as possible, instinctively understanding that any movement might interfere with the delicate process. Those intelligent eyes never left Marcus's face, and he found himself drawing strength from the creature's trust. Here was a being that had every reason to fear humans, yet it was placing its life entirely in his hands. When the trap finally collapsed, it did so with a sound like breaking glass and the sharp ozone smell of disrupted energy fields. The dragon dropped gently to the ground, its small body trembling with relief and residual shock. Marcus immediately knelt beside it, his hands hovering uncertainly over its injured form. He had no idea how to treat a dragon, but his basic first aid training suggested checking for obvious injuries first. The creature's left wing bore scorch marks from the energy field, and one of its hind legs was clearly strained from the prolonged suspension. When Marcus gently extended his hand, palm up, the dragon sniffed cautiously before allowing him to touch its scaled hide. The skin was warm and surprisingly soft, more like fine leather than the armored plating he had expected. As his fingers made contact, he felt a strange tingling sensation, as if some kind of energy was passing between them. It was then that the mist around them began to shift and swirl with unnatural purpose. The temperature dropped noticeably, and the very air seemed to thicken with an oppressive weight that made breathing difficult. Marcus looked up from the injured dragon to find that they were no longer alone in the canyon. Emerging from the crimson-tinted fog came shapes that dwarfed the youngling he had just rescued. Adult dragons materialized from the mist like living mountains, their massive forms blocking out what little sunlight penetrated into the canyon. These were creatures of legend made flesh, beings whose very presence seemed to alter the fundamental nature of reality around them. Their scales were not the bright colors of the youngling, but deep, ancient hues that spoke of centuries or millennia of existence. Scars marked their hides, testament to battles fought and survived across the long years of their lives. The largest of them, a massive beast whose scales held the deep blue-black of midnight sky, fixed Marcus with eyes like molten gold. When it spoke, the words formed directly in his mind rather than through his ears, a voice that carried the weight of ages and the power to command storms. "Human child," the voice resonated through his consciousness, "you have touched what belongs to us. You have interfered with forces beyond your understanding. Justify your actions, or face the consequences of your transgression." Marcus found his voice despite the overwhelming presence surrounding him. "I saw a creature in pain and acted to help it. I would do the same for any living being, regardless of species or origin." He kept his tone respectful but firm, refusing to show the fear that threatened to overwhelm his rational mind. If that action was wrong in your eyes, then I accept whatever judgment you deem appropriate. The ancient dragons studied him for what felt like hours, though only moments passed. In the outside world, other members of the flight, for Marcus now realized he stood in the presence of an entire clan of dragons, observed in silence. Their attention focused entirely on this unprecedented encounter between their kind and humanity. The baby dragon he had rescued made soft chirping sounds, apparently attempting to communicate something to its elders. Curious, the elder dragon's mental voice carried undertones of surprise. You show no deception in your thoughts, no hidden agenda in your actions. When did humans begin to act without expectation of reward or advancement? The question seemed rhetorical, but Marcus sensed that his answer would determine not only his fate, but possibly the fate of his entire species. We always could, Marcus replied quietly. Perhaps you simply never encountered the right humans before. We're not all the same, just as I suspect dragons are not all the same. Some of us still remember that compassion is what makes us truly human. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to Marcus's amazement, the great dragon lowered its massive head until those ancient eyes were level with his own. You speak truth, small human. And in freeing our youngest, without thought of consequence or reward, you have demonstrated something we thought lost to your kind. You have shown honor. What happened next would have seemed impossible to anyone who witnessed it. The entire flight of dragons arranged themselves in a perfect circle around Marcus, their heads lowered in what could only be described as a gesture of respect. The elder began to emit a low, harmonious tone that was picked up and amplified by each member of the flight in turn. The sound built into a complex harmonic structure that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the mountain dot. As the dragon song reached its crescendo, Marcus felt something fundamental shift within himself. A connection formed, not just with the youngling he had saved, but with the entire dragon flight. Their ancient memories flickered at the edges of his consciousness, glimpses of the world as it had been centuries ago, of threats that had come from beyond the stars, of secrets hidden in the deepest places of the earth. You have been tested, Marcus Chun of the humans. The elder's voice now carried warmth along with its power. And you have been found worthy of a trust that your species has not earned for 1,000 generations. What we offer you now has never been offered to a human before. The choice and its consequences are yours alone to bear. The baby dragon, now recovered enough to move, climbed carefully up Marcus's arm to perch on his shoulder. Its small claws gripped his jacket with surprising gentleness, and he could feel its rapid heartbeat against his neck. Whatever was about to happen, the creature that had started this incredible chain of events would share in his fate. Marcus looked around at the circle of ancient, powerful beings that surrounded him, each one capable of reducing him to ash with a single breath, yet all of them waiting patiently for his response to an offer he didn't yet understand. In that moment, suspended between his old life and whatever lay ahead, he made the choice that would change everything. I accept, he said simply, not knowing what he was accepting, but trusting in the same compassion that had led him to free a suffering creature in the first place. The dragon elder's expression, if such a term could be applied to a draconic face, showed something that might have been satisfaction. Then let the bonding begin, and may both our species find strength in what is to come. The revelation and new alliance. The bonding ceremony began with a sound unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. It started as a barely audible hum, rising from deep within the chests of the assembled dragons, but quickly evolved into something that transcended mere sound. The harmonics resonated through the stone walls of the canyon, through the ground beneath his feet, and ultimately through the very cells of his body. Marcus felt his bones vibrate in sympathy with the dragon song, and his heartbeat synchronized with rhythms that had been old when humanity was young. The baby dragon on his shoulder, whom he had begun thinking of as Ember, due to the golden highlights in her scales, pressed closer against his neck. Through their growing connection, he sensed her excitement mixed with reverence. This was clearly a momentous event in dragon culture, something she was honored to witness despite her young age. Her small claws kneaded gently against his shoulder, a gesture that reminded him oddly of a contented cat dot as the ceremony continued. Marcus became aware that each dragon in the circle was contributing something unique to the complex harmonic structure. The elder, who had identified himself as Draconvel, provided the fundamental bass notes that seemed to anchor reality itself. A sleek female with silver-blue scales added crystalline overtones that made the air shimmer with visible energy. A scarred warrior whose scales bore the green-black patina of ancient bronze contributed rhythmic patterns that spoke of battles fought and victories earned through countless years. Do not resist what you feel beginning within you, Drakenvel's mental voice carried gentle warning. The bonding process will awaken capabilities that lie dormant in human genetics. Your ancestors carried the potential, but the knowledge of its activation was lost during the Great Forgetting. What we restore to you now comes with both power and responsibility. Marcus tried to ask what the Great Forgetting had been, but his question was swept away as changes began to occur within his body. It started as a tingling sensation in his extremities, similar to what he had felt when first touching Ember's scales, but rapidly intensified into something far more profound. His vision began to shift, revealing layers of reality that had been invisible before. The canyon walls showed traces of energy patterns that indicated the presence of mineral deposits far below ground. The mist itself became visible as streams of airborne particles, each one carrying chemical signatures that told stories of distant weather systems and atmospheric conditions. But the most dramatic change was in his perception of the dragons themselves. Where before he had seen magnificent, but essentially physical creatures, he now perceived beings of incredible complexity whose existence spanned multiple dimensions simultaneously. Drakenvel was not just an ancient dragon, but a nexus point where knowledge, wisdom, and power converged across centuries of accumulated experience. The other dragons revealed similar depth, each one a library of memories and capabilities that stretched back through generations. We are the last guardians of Earth's deep secrets, the elder explained, as the bonding process stabilized. For millennia, we have watched and waited, protecting this world from threats that your species could not imagine. But the time of watching is ending. The Shadow Fleet approaches, and neither dragons nor humans can face this threat alone. Through the bond, Marcus received images that made his engineering mind reel with their implications. Ships of impossible design moving between the stars, their hulls constructed from materials that seemed to absorb light itself. These vessels were not exploration craft or trade ships, but weapons of conquest designed to strip planets of their resources and leave barren husks in their wake. Earth had been marked for harvesting, and the Shadow Fleet was already within the outer edges of the solar system. How long do we have? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the overwhelming nature of what he was learning. By human measurement, perhaps 6 months before their advanced scouts reach Earth's atmosphere, replied the silver-blue female, whom Drakenvel introduced as Azuronim, the flight's primary strategist. They will come first with reconnaissance, drones mapping population centers and defensive capabilities. The main assault will follow within a year. Asterisk. But humanity doesn't even know they exist, Marcus protested. Our governments, our military forces, they're not prepared for anything like this. Most people still think dragons are mythological creatures. Which brings us to the true purpose of your bonding, Drakenvel said, and Marcus sensed satisfaction in the ancient dragon's mental voice. For generations, we have searched for a human who could serve as a bridge between our species. Someone with the technical knowledge to understand both human and draconic capabilities, the courage to face impossible odds, and the wisdom to unite rather than conquer. Marcus felt the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. You want me to convince humanity to ally with dragons against an alien invasion that they don't know is coming, using evidence that most people will dismiss as elaborate fiction or mental illness. The task is challenging, admitted Azura Nim, but not impossible. Your species has always responded to crisis with remarkable innovation and cooperation. Once the threat becomes undeniable, our role is to ensure that when that moment comes, they have the tools necessary for survival. The bonding process reached its culmination as the dragon song shifted into a new harmonic structure. Marcus felt something fundamental click into place within his consciousness, like a key turning in a lock that had been waiting his entire life to open. Suddenly, he could perceive the flow of energy through the dragon flight, understanding intuitively how their collective power functioned. More importantly, he could feel his own latent abilities awakening in response to the ancient song. Ember chirped excitedly. On his shoulder, as small flames flickered around Marcus's hands, not burning him, but dancing across his skin like living jewelry. His enhanced vision now extended across multiple spectrums, allowing him to see energy signatures, structural weaknesses, and the health status of every living thing within range. Most remarkably, he found that he could communicate directly with the dragons through thought alone, no longer requiring Draconvel to serve as translator. The physical changes are only the beginning, the elder dragon explained. Over time, your capabilities will continue to develop. Flight will become possible, though not in the same manner as dragons achieve it. Your lifespan will extend significantly, though still remaining within human parameters. Most importantly, you will serve as a living example that cooperation between our species is not only possible, but beneficial to both. There are others like you among the humans, added the bronze-scaled warrior, whose name Marcus learned was Thorak Giench. Scattered across your world, individuals carry the genetic markers that would allow them to bond with dragons. Finding and awakening them will be part of your mission. Humanity will need more than one bridge builder to face what is coming. Marcus stood slowly, marveling at how the world looked different through his enhanced perceptions. Every color was more vivid, every sound carried additional layers of meaning, and he could sense the emotional states of the dragons around him with startling clarity. Ember had grown more comfortable with her perch, now grooming her small claws with obvious contentment. "How do I begin?" he asked. "How do I convince world leaders to take this threat seriously without revealing the existence of dragons prematurely? If I approach this wrong, I could cause panic or be dismissed as delusional." "You begin with preparation," Draconvel replied. "Return to human civilization, but know that you do not go alone. Ember has chosen to bond with you permanently, a rare honor that has not been granted to a human in over 1,000 years. Through her, you will maintain contact with our flight, and access to knowledge that spans millennia." The baby dragon chirped agreement, then began what Marcus could only describe as purring, a sound that vibrated through his entire body and filled him with a sense of peace and purpose he had never experienced before. Their bond was more than just magical connection. It was a partnership that would reshape both their destinies. "We will guide you toward others of your kind who can be trusted with this knowledge," Azura Nim continued. "Scientists, military leaders, individuals in positions of influence who have the courage to act on extraordinary evidence. Build your network carefully, but build it quickly. Time grows short, and the Shadow Fleet scouts grow bolder with each passing day." As the ceremony concluded, Marcus felt the full weight of his new reality settling around him. He was no longer just a nature photographer seeking interesting shots in remote locations. He had become humanity's first dragon-bonded guardian, carrying the responsibility for his entire species' survival. The magnitude of the task ahead would have been paralyzing under normal circumstances, but the dragon bond filled him with strength and determination that went far beyond his natural human capabilities. "Will I see you again?" he asked as the dragons began to fade back into the mist. "We are never truly apart now," Drakenvel replied, his mental voice carrying warmth and confidence. "Through Ember, through the bond we have created, you carry part of us with you always. When the time comes for dragons to reveal themselves to humanity, you will know. Until then, prepare them as best you can. The future of both our species depends on the bridges you build." Marcus watched as the ancient dragons dissolved back into the crimson mist, their massive forms becoming part of the mountain's natural mystery once again. Only he and Ember remained in the canyon, two unlikely companions whose bond would either save the world or witness its destruction. As he began the climb back toward civilization, Marcus felt the weight of destiny balanced against the strength of hope. Humanity's greatest test was approaching, but for the first time in their history, they would not face it alone. The baby dragon settled more comfortably on his shoulder, her warmth a constant reminder that miracles were possible in species. Chose cooperation over conquest. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus knew that the alliance forged in this hidden canyon would prove that sometimes the strongest bonds are formed not through similarity, but through the courage to trust in something greater than oneself. Asterisk,